The number one thing for me is how you feel about yourself and how you treat yourself. I think the biggest thing for me in my journey was learning to be gentle on myself. We're always making mistakes, right? We're human. And then we beat up on ourselves. We say should on ourselves. I should have done this. I should have done that. Well, yeah, you could have, but you didn't. How can you learn from it and then do something different, either now or the next time?
Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Milrad, certified divorce coach, relationship expert, author, dad, and financial planner. Our episode today is Co-Parenting During the Holidays, and with me is Jeanne Ward, a coach who helps separated and divorced parents strengthen their relationship and focus on positive parenting after divorce. She specializes in positive parenting post-divorce and confident co-parenting, guiding parents through the challenges of transition. Jeanne is also the host of the Confident Co-Parenting podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts. But before we begin, a quick note. This podcast is designed to share ideas, stories, and insights from my years of working in the mental health field, helping individuals navigate divorce, and from my own personal experiences. I'm not a therapist, attorney, or doctor, so this podcast is meant to complement, not replace, professional guidance from such qualified experts. If this episode helps you today, do me a favor, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button and drop a review. It makes a huge difference in the number of people we can help. All right, let's go. Jeanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you here.
It's really good to be here.
So let's start with your background. What led you down this path to become a confident co-parenting coach?
Well, it's a long story. My career has taken a lot of twists and turns. I started out as a forensic psychologist working with mentally ill inmates on Rikers Island in New York City, and then moved to Atlanta in beginning of '08 and got into consulting for nonprofits. I was doing strategic planning consulting for nonprofits. In 2000, I was doing that with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, with their IT and cybersecurity department. It was a role that I loved and just felt so honored to be in that role. And then in January of 2020, my dad died. In July of 2020, my mom died. And then in January of 2022, my brother died. And that was my nuclear family, my family of origin. And so it took swept the rug under my feet, like pulled it out. And even though I was in this role that I loved, I couldn't keep it together. And so I left and dealt with the deaths and the estate planning and everything that I had to do. But then I was in this place of what now? And I had just had this major life shift. And even though I enjoyed what I was doing, I didn't want to go back to it because I wanted to do something much more heartfelt and personal to me and my experiences. And I thought about the co-parenting relationship that my ex and I have. And it took years, but we got to a really, really great place in our co-parenting. And I just kept thinking, if I can help others get to a similar place, if that's what they want, I want to be the one to help them. And so that's when I started taking courses in coaching, became a certified divorce coach as well, and started taking on clients, helping them with co-parenting issues.
It's really crazy. We never really know, what path our life is going to take and what sort of life events will happen. And I'm sorry you went through so much pain, but I'm glad that you have put so much effort into your growth and are helping people and are being of service.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to add to that, it's interesting, speaking of divorce and that process, that one took me to my knees. Excuse me, I even say now with all of that I just shared, the divorce was harder on me than the divorce for me happened about 10 years ago. And that was even harder than losing my parents and my brother. And I think it was because I started doing the work back then to get to where I was confident. I felt like a confident parent, a confident co-parent. And so I had resources and people in my life that could support me when I was going through the deaths. So that's another reason why I feel like this work is so important.
Yeah. And many people say divorce is like a death. It's very impactful on us. And, as you are very much aware, there's the entire process of divorce, which is division of assets and putting together a parenting plan. If you have kids, and often, true deep co-parenting advice gets glossed over. Many attorneys aren't qualified to provide that advice. In fact, in my own experience, I did take a co-parenting class, which was excellent, but it was literally days before we went to trial. And I wish I had that information right at the beginning, because there's things I would have done differently. And, because it gets glossed over, the divorce is finalized, you get the decree, and so many parents are kind of splitting up the households and splitting up the assets, and there's really no direction or manual. And I'll speak for my own practice. A lot of the issues kind of stem from lack of a co-parenting plan. So, not only do I really, appreciate and honor what you're doing as a divorce coach, but I think your role as a co-parenting counselor is absolutely critical. And as you and I know, it's not divorce that destroys kids. It's how parents handle divorce that destroy kids. So I'm kind of curious, Jeannie, what are you typically seeing, when parents are going through divorce and when they come to you? What is the situation typically like?
It's very stressful, a lot of emotions and lots of emotions that even we as adults don't and can't identify, let alone our kids, right? I mean, kids, depending on their age, are just still even learning about emotions, right? Young children will often interchange anger, sadness, and fear, together, right? They interchange all of those because they haven't quite figured out the nuances of them yet. So I think the ability to know what your feelings are and then to be able to utilize those in how you communicate and how you parent is really important. And what I see a lot of is that that's just not happening, and people get into trouble and react to things because they're not fully aware of what they're going through. And then what I think happens too, a lot of what I hear about is there's either not much focus on the kids. There's so much focus on, as a parent, what I'm going through and how my ex or soon to be ex is doing things that's just so stressful for me. And if there is a focus on the kid, it's often what I'm thinking, what I think is best. And I promote that, right? Do what's best for your kid. If they're old enough though, involve them in it, right? I don't get a lot of parents who are asking the kids for their input, right? Even when I'll work with parents on making some changes in the maybe rules of the house or in the two homes or where the kids are going to live or going back and forth. When there's changes, they'll talk about, yes, we're going to have a family powwow and go through it. And then when they report back, 95% of what happened was they were telling the kids what's going to happen. So I think that can be really helpful too, is include your kids, even if they're really little, because they still are experiencing things or having emotions, and they can share to the degree that they can based on their age.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think what's really important, for anyone listening to this podcast is co-parenting is absolutely critical. You don't have to be on the same page, although it's always nice when you are, but to have good, strong, effective communication and to be able to talk about the big and the small issues. And that doesn't just involve having a co-parenting counselor. It also involves you doing the work, because divorces aren't always amicable. In many cases, they're not. So there's still pent up anger and resentments and things that will take a lifetime to work through. So it's really important that we do the work on ourselves, but that we also, do the work with our co-parent and don't drag our kids into it. So, the topic today is really about the holidays, and, especially when it's your first year, either in a separation, or you're fully divorced and your homes are fully separated. It brings up a lot of stress, and we're already in November. We're a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving, and then we have the winter break and New Year's, and lots of things to celebrate. But it's also a very lonely and stressful time. So, Jeannie, can you tell us a little bit about co-parenting during these times?
Yeah, well, I love how you've described the wonderful things about the holidays, right? There can be a lot of fun, and especially for the kids, if gifts are involved and or just, different activities. It can also be, like you said, it can be lonely, it can be stressful. We are disrupting the habits and the patterns that we've had. You might still be a person out there might still be trying to figure out this new life, new routine. And then to throw in the holidays makes it that much more chaotic, right? And then if you do have your pattern set up in the two new homes, and you've gotten consistency, which is really good and healthy for the kids. Holidays throw that out of whack too, just by nature of the holidays. So that's where it can just get really, really wonky. And it's important to, again, like you said, communicate, making sure that you're talking to the kids, the ex, if that's appropriate, and planning ahead, knowing what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. And if it also means adding in some new habits or traditions, then do that. I've heard before where someone was really sad about on the holiday that evening, there used to be a big family gathering, and now they're the spouse that's out of that family. And so on their years with the kids, she felt extremely sad and down that she wasn't giving the kids what they used to have. Well, what she did was she decided that night on those years that she's got the kids, they're going to do a dance party. And, they pushed all of the furniture outside of the living room and just blasted music and had a dance party all night. And that became their new tradition. So, parents can do to bring the joy back and find out what works for them, what works for their kids. Keeping as much fun and consistency as possible during the holidays really helps.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. And, I just want to throw it out there for the parent who may not have the kids, or there's certain, time periods where they're going to be alone. Make sure you have plans, because otherwise it gets very lonely. You can still have fun without your kids, believe it or not. So it's absolutely critical. So what do you see in that space?
I see a lot of resistance, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, and what's coming up for me is, so my ex and I just did a podcast on confident co-parenting, and it was interesting because even, 10 years out, and like I said, we've got a good relationship and we communicate fairly well. Things came up on that podcast that he had never shared with me. It brought up then some stuff for me that I realized I hadn't shared with him. Sometimes we think we're giving and sharing and we're not. But the other thing that he shared that I did not know was how hard emotionally the divorce was for him. And it was a situation where he wanted it. I did not. And so it just blew my mind that it was hard for him, because I thought, oh, you're happy you got what you wanted. But he said he struggled, he experienced depression, and that he wasn't willing to reach out to friends. And he said, looking back, that was a big regret for him, that he did not seek out support from friends and or a professional. But he thought, friends are easier, right? They're there, you're still communicating here and there, but he just never told them what he was going through. And he said it made it so much harder for him. So, you're right. Like, it can be really hard for that parent that's on their own, especially for the first time ever on a holiday, or, since you've had your family together. So yeah, to plan and identify supports.
Yep. So I would suggest that, as you start planning for the holidays, don't just plan for your kids, plan for yourself as well. So when should we start planning for the holidays? How far in advance, and what should we be thinking about? What would you, share as some of the best practices?
Yeah, I think even August, September to start planting the seed is not too early, because in America, for those that celebrate Halloween, that's coming, we're starting to plan for that mid-October, right? And so already you're starting to get distracted with planning what the kids are going to wear and what you're going to do. And then it goes right into Thanksgiving, and then it goes right into the December holidays and New Year's. So I think the sooner the better. And even starting to identify any sort of patterns that you want to see happening, right? So that planning can be like in a parenting plan, right? We say you list out who's going to have whom, which parent is going to have the kids on different holidays. Well, think in those concrete terms of, okay, and when I have them, what will I do? What will we do? And when I don't have them, what will I do? So to get as concrete as you can, I think is really helpful, and as early as you can. But even if you don't, it's okay, because we always have to go with the flow. Even if you have the plan, it could always blow up in your face, right? And so it's always good to have the flexibility and the calmness and gentleness for yourself to go with any changes. If you haven't planned and it's in November and you're feeling stressed about, oh no, what the hell am I going to do? It's right around the corner. It's okay. Think through what you'd like. And if it doesn't go as planned, think of plan B, plan C.
Absolutely. What about communication with your kids' other parent during that time? What is kind of your opinion on opening up and ensuring there's communication or not?
Yeah, that's a really great point, right? Because there's the parallel parenting or collaborative, and it's okay if parents are not really communicating or not communicating. One thing that my son always would say to us is he loved that we communicated, but he didn't like that we had different rules in different homes. And he felt like if we're communicating and we're on the same page, we need to have the same rules. We disagreed, and that was something that he just had to deal with. And the way I justify it, because it upset him and I felt bad, but our kids go to school and have a set of rules. Our kids, if they're in a club or a sport, there's different rules there, right? So, we can't expect that every place we go is going to have the same rules. And same thing with two homes. There's different ways to communicate. There's obviously like all the tips and tricks. There's things like it's traditionally called nonviolent communication, but some people have renamed it the language of compassion. And it's a four-step process of how to speak about your needs and your wants when they're not being met. So that's a tip and a tool that people can use. I love motivational interviewing. And I always love, I got a resource here. I love this book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. You might be familiar with it, but it talks a lot about how do you communicate specifically with your kids, but you can use this in all relationships in your life of hearing what they're saying and then rephrasing or repeating so that you make sure you're hearing them and then you can get to a solution that, hopefully both parties are happy with. So there's all these things you can do about to help communication. Justin, we learn in our coaching just the different types of things you can do online, using BIF or, being civil and informative and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
I think that the biggest thing that comes up for me too is boundaries. And it may not seem like it fits in with communication, but for me, boundaries are so critical. And I always used to think that boundaries had to do with what I thought someone should or shouldn't do. And the way that I look at boundaries now and how I use boundaries now is it's a boundary for me. I know we've talked about like the line in the sand, right? Where is my line? So if we're communicating about what we're going to do for the holidays, and me and my ex have a difference of opinion of what's going to happen, where do I keep that boundary? And if the ex isn't meeting it, it's not up to me to try to make the ex do something different because I have no control over that person. But what will I do different if my desire is not getting met? And so again, it's like having that plan B, plan C. For example, if I'm going to pick up the kids at 1 o'clock on Thanksgiving because we're expected to be at my mom's house for Thanksgiving at 2, and it's a half an hour drive. Well, if the ex doesn't bring the kids, it's 1:05, 1:10. Maybe my boundary can be if you're not able to bring them here by 1, I'll come to your house at 1:30 because I need to be at my mom's at 2, right? Now, you don't need to say that because the ex might say, okay, well, I'll just wait for you to get them.
Right.
But in your mind, you can know this is my plan B in the event that what I've asked to happen, if it doesn't happen, so that I can still, have the outcome in the end that I want.
Absolutely. So what would you say are some of the common mistakes to avoid during the holidays and in terms of setting yourself up for success during the holidays?
The number one thing for me is how you feel about yourself and how you treat yourself. I think the biggest thing for me in my journey was learning to be gentle on myself. And yeah, I see it as a big pitfall that I hear this all the time and I see it where, you know, we're always making mistakes, right? We're human. And then we beat up on ourselves. We say should on ourselves. I should have done this. I should have done that. Well, you could have, but you didn't. How can you learn from it and then do something different either now or the next time? So I think that's the biggest thing is just being gentle on yourself as you're moving through this process in this really hard time. And then again, things like not communicating or bringing the anger and retaliation into the communications, showing it to the kids, right? We all have issues and feelings around the ex and what we've been through or what we're going through. It's really important to have other outlets to vent, right? And to do everything you can not to let the kids see or hear it. So I think things like that, try to avoid anything that can make you feel bad or your kids feel bad during the process.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also feel like we all have like an Auntie Rosie or an Auntie Annie who will say something not very nice about the ex. And I think it's important when you have some people in your family or a friend network that you're a little concerned about, pull them aside one time and just say, hey, listen, this is new territory for the kids. Please be there to support them. Please don't say bad things about their ex. It's their mother, it's their father. They love them. And we don't want to use our kids as messengers, and we don't want them to feel bad. We want them to find the joy in the holiday.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I love that example because it's planning, right? You're having that conversation, you're planning for the event, the meal, and you're communicating with them. So yeah, that's an excellent example to handle it. And sometimes I also like to have or help people identify a little mantra of what they can either say to themselves in the moment and or say to others. For example, if people are trying to get into your business and or tell you how to parent or handle things, a saying might be, you may be right, and leave it, right? If that works for you to just be able to put the wall up by saying, you may be right, usually it deflects and diffuses the other person.
What about protecting your children? Like, we don't want to be overprotective, but we also want to make sure that they're having a safe environment and, going back to the word joy, the most joyous experience for the holiday. What sort of advice would you give here? I think as a parent, we're always looking to protect our children. Sometimes we're overprotective. Can you kind of give us your advice on how we should prepare ourselves for this, and knowing that there are many things outside of our control and that our kids continually need to learn to grow and deal with internal and external factors, how to best handle protecting our kids as a parent?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's two things that come up for me, and one is identifying if this is upsetting for me as the parent that's hearing or seeing the experience or wanting to step in to make sure our kids are safe. So is it something where, like we talk about with the holidays, there can be situations like the other parent might be giving a bigger, more expensive gift or a better experience? And is that creating jealousy for me? So who's it impacting? Is this a me problem or is this something that is hurting the kids? And then the other thing is this dangerous to the children, right? Is there some sort of emotional, physical, sexual abuse or damage going on or potentially going on that we absolutely need to step in? And if that's not the case, if it's more around just discomfort with something, then, I think that's where we have opportunities to grow as parents of taking a step back. And again, like I said, looking at our own emotions, identifying what's going on. Am I jealous? Am I mad? Am I scared? Right? Am I scared that the situation has the potential that my kid will get hurt emotionally or physically? My kid played rugby and football. And so I always had this fear of physical danger of him getting hurt on the field or the pitch. And so, it's that what's going on. And then how realistic is it, right? To what degree do we want to put a boundary or a barrier because of our emotions, right? So I wasn't going to stop my child from playing sports, but I did have that fear that he could still get hurt, right? But I tried to check it at the door with at least still letting him play. So yeah, so the first thing is who's this hard for? The second thing is how bad can it be? And if it's not a real dangerous situation, like I said, with physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, then to what degree can we let our kids start to grow and learn on their own, right? Because that's one thing I think we've seen this gentle parenting experience that we've had in the last, I don't know, maybe decade, where our kids are not always learning how to fall down and pick themselves back up because we're stepping in and doing it for them. Right? The holidays are hard and they suck. And for all of us, we can have moments of, anger, sadness, all those bad emotions. Well, sometimes it's okay. And we need to go through those emotions and feel them, even our kids. And even our kids need to learn how to process the feelings and move through them and then maybe even advocate for themselves. Because if they're not learning it now, when they become adults, they're just not going to have the practice or know how.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. One of the things I do with my kids, and it's different for everyone, but we'll do a check-in. and we'll see how they're doing and how did this feel and, what felt normal and what felt a little strange. And I think having that communication is super important. So before we wrap up, I have a very important question that I know it's an area that kids love, which is gift giving. And not every parent can buy the same type of gift in terms of cost. Sometimes there's just different philosophies on gift giving. And then on top of that, there's the question of, hey, dad, we should all buy a gift for mom. And if you have young kids, that means dad's paying for it. And when perhaps there's some resentment or anger or financial constraint, it's not an easy decision for dad to say yes. Given those two scenarios, just general gift giving and then buying a gift for the other parent, what are your views there?
Yeah. Always love it when I see exes with little kids helping create and or purchase a gift for the ex, right? I mean, to me, that's true altruism. You're stepping outside of yourself for your ex and for the kids who can't do these things on their own yet, right? And you're teaching them, you're modeling for them that, even if it's, let's say for a mom and it's Mother's Day coming up, even maybe helping the kid write or draw on a card to give to mom, right? It's modeling that we still want to honor mom on that day or on her birthday. So I think the modeling of it is wonderful and important and so great if a person can do that. And it comes down to, like you said, where a person's at, what they are able to do. Maybe this year they can't do that. Maybe emotionally they're just not there, and that's okay. Take it day by day, year by year. And it depends on the kids' ages, right? So to communicate with your kid to see how much they can do, because even a card and a card that's made at home is thoughtful and appreciated from a parent. It doesn't have to be creating a big gift or purchasing something for the ex. And the other thing is, how can you provide different alternatives to gifts? You know, different things that make the holiday special without having to spend money. Because even if you've got the money to spend it on gifts, and sometimes we hear that happening where kids just feel like the parent is buying them something expensive but doesn't really have or show the love for them, right? So how can you do other things that celebrate them, your new family, as well as the holidays? And it could be experiences. It could be, if you have no money, what about creating a tradition where you go to serve at a homeless shelter or you go and clean up at the local humane society for a day, right? So creating these experiences that you're together, you're helping others, which always feels good, and that can be also something that helps the family come together and feel good during the holidays.
No doubt. In my opinion, the most wonderful gift is the gift of time, where you make some wonderful memories with your family members.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in an era where we are so inundated with information and things to do, and time is so precious. You're absolutely right.
So, Jeanne, how do our listeners get in touch with you?
I encourage everyone to go to my website, which is confidentcoparenting.com. And there you can get resources. You can click on a signing up for a 20-minute intro complimentary conversation. There's also a podcast tab where you can find podcasts that I've done in the past and just different information about me, how I approach my coaching, as well as, all the details of costs and the coaching process.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So the holidays are meant for joy, not perfection. This season, give yourself permission to slow down and focus on what really matters. Connection, laughter, and creating memories that feel real, not rushed. The best moments aren't about perfected plans. They're about presence. So give yourself and the people you love some grace and enjoy simple, meaningful moments. Thank you so much for tuning into The Conscious Divorce. If today's episode resonated with you, take a second to like, follow, or share it with someone who might need a little encouragement for this holiday season. You can learn more about what I do at reclaimandreboot.me. And don't forget to check out my book, You 2.0, Divorce, A Better Way Forward, and the You 2 workbook available on Amazon. And if you're ready to take the next step, I'd love to connect with you for a free 30-minute consultation. No pressure, just real conversation about where you are and how to start building your next chapter with more clarity and confidence. So until next time, take care of yourself, make some beautiful memories this holiday season, and keep showing up for yourself and others consciously. Have a wonderful day.